Chris Waipa, the mortgage punk.
Hey,
And Chris, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Well, I'm doing a lot better now that I figured out how to use my technology today to
Yeah.
to do this recording with you. So,
Well, what's new? What's going on in your world?
man, we are just staying pretty busy. I mean, it's home buying season from probably now till what would you agree? Thanksgiving, maybe, I would
Yep.
say. So, we just got a lot of people out shopping for homes. It's amazing. You would think the home buying market is at a lull, but there's plenty of people out buying houses. That's
Yeah.
for darn sure. So we're staying busy, and we're thankful.
Good. So you are a lender. So how did you get into the mortgage world?
Against my own will.
Yeah.
Oops, I'm sorry. I'll move my thumb there. Let me move this around here. So, yeah, totally against my own will, Larry. That's no joke. Like before I was in lending, I was in a band, and I was in my 20s. I've been at this now for 21 years, but before that, back in the late 90s, and then kind of at the turn of the century, I was playing guitar, writing songs, playing shows, traveling around, and the last thing on my mind, or it just wasn't even in my universe, would be mortgage banking or lending or business or anything of that nature.
So how did you stumble upon getting into the mortgage industry?
So at the time, my wife and I were actually doing this together. We had to step away from the band life, and I had to find a job. And I'm like, well, I told my wife Keisha, I said, I mean, my resume is kind of like singer, songwriter, guitar player. Maybe I could squeeze public speaking in because I did a lot of that, you know. But yeah, I had no clue what I was going to do, man. I planned my whole life around that path or going down that path. And so my wife had an idea one day. She was like, hey, why don't you go talk to, this is a friend of ours that was actually one of our early bass players who had stopped playing music in a serious way because he had a career in banking. And so my wife's thought was maybe if you go see him, maybe he'll have an idea. She wasn't thinking about maybe he'll have a job. She just thought maybe he'll have some ideas on where you could go, or maybe he knows someone type thing. So when I walked into his office and kind of told him a little bit about what was going on, we were making major life changes. He just said pretty much right there on the spot, he's like, dude, you could do this job. And I'm like, well, you know me pretty well, so if you're saying that, then, you know, tell me more about it. So that was back in 2003, 2004 timeframe, right in there. I became a mortgage banker or a mortgage broker at the time. So been in it ever since. So totally against my will, man. My will was to be playing guitar, you know, and rocking out.
So where did you come up with your little mortgage punk brand? Like, how did that become a thing?
Yeah, good question. So about a year ago, I had met with a branding and marketing company, and I told them, I don't really know what I need to do, but I want to do something disruptive in the mortgage space because after 21 years of doing this, I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree that's ever experienced going through a mortgage, even if it was a fairly okay ride. I mean, the whole process of getting a mortgage and getting, vetted by an underwriting department and, swimming through paperwork, it's not like the funnest thing in the world. It's
right.
I think it's like surgery. Like you want the outcome, but no one wants the procedure. Like the procedure is just invasive,
Yeah.
And then if things get rough during the process that's already a rough process, then it just exacerbates everything. It frustrates home buyers, and I've just seen a lot of people disheartened, want to give up, never buy a house again, have their dreams shattered, going through mortgage finance. And so I don't believe I have the be all end all answer, but I definitely want to be a voice in the mortgage industry that advocates for some serious change in the way banks go about pre-approving buyers for home loans and the way they process those home loans and the expectations they set and so forth along the way. So after sitting down with this branding and marketing company and kind of going back and forth for about 3 to 6 months or something like that, they told me we were having like a planning session one day, and they said something along the lines of, Chris, people like stories and people connect well with stories. And we think you have a great story having come from a rock band, career to being a mortgage banker. Like the two don't even really go together. It's like water and ice, man. It's two completely different worlds. And so they said, we think you should take if you want to do something disruptive, we think you should take your career in music and find some way to like mesh that in to your mortgage career. And I thought at first, that sounds fun, but I don't really know what that's going to look like, or what does that look like? I guess was my big question. And so we ended up just coming up with some creative, like artistic design work that reflected my personality and kind of the things that I like. Well, one of the things I like is punk rock music. Like I'm a big fan of punk music. I always have been. And so we kind of started playing into that, and they started creating, the graphic designer that was involved started creating some graphics to reflect that, aspect of my life. And during another strategy meeting, the graphic designer that was involved sat down with me, and he said, Chris, I think that it's like, here's some of the designs I've come up with, here's some of the concepts. I think it's very disruptive. It reflects you and your personality and your, the things you like and things like that. And he just said, like, I'm kind of trying to design something that looks like mortgage and punk. And I sat back, I'm like, dude, I think you just came up with the name for this whole brand, rebranding idea, mortgage punk. And I about fell over because, of course I like it because that's, I was a skater, man. I was the BMX kid, the skater kid, kind of a dork in school. Everybody kind of liked me, but I was an anomaly, man. It was born, yeah. And so I had to sit back for a minute, and then my first thought was, like, how am I going to get that to go over, like, credibly in the mortgage industry when I'm dealing with people who are buying the most expensive item that most people buy in their lifetime. And so I just kind of got bold about it, and I love it so much. I started asking some of the agents around me, how would this come across? And we just decided to run with it, man. I have a disclaimer. I have to tell the story to everyone I talk to coming in the door so that they know,
yeah.
Okay, Chris, you work for a legitimate bank, but you have a super fun name for your team and your own brand. So,
well, and you're super knowledgeable, so it's not like, you're going to show up and not know what the heck you're talking about.
Yeah. It was funny because I was talking to an agent the other day that I was helping do an open house with, and it was Julie Reichert, Julie. So I was telling Julie, I'm like, Julie, I just need to be able to tell someone the kind of the 1 minute story of my brand, because I know after they talk to me for 5 or 10 minutes, they're going to know pretty quick, like, this guy is You usually
Yeah,
can tell when someone knows what they're talking about
exactly.
confidently. So anyhow, once I get to know someone for a few minutes, answer some, geeky questions on the banking side of the fence, then it's pretty easy to introduce the brand. And, probably not for everyone, but most people seem to have fun with it,
Yeah.
like we do. So,
So you said that you've been in this business since 2005?
right around in 2003, 2004. Right,
2003.
right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what in your now 20, 21 years of experience,
Yeah.
what would you say is the craziest kind of lending story that you can
Yeah.
tell without getting in trouble?
Yeah. That's a good. So I had, okay, I was in Denver, Colorado. So I'm from Wichita, along with my wife. But back in 2000, I think it was right about in 2004, like I got into mortgage banking, and then I got this really cool opportunity to move to Denver, Colorado and work for a national home builder. So, in fact, both me and my wife were offered the job. So we didn't have kids at the time, so we both moved there. We both went to work for Lennar Homes, big national home builder. Wichita, Kansas is too small for a Lennar, so they kind of hang out in the big, giant metro cities.
Yeah.
But we moved to Denver, and I was working for Lennar. And so at Lennar, they took like their sales training pretty seriously. It was some of the best sales training I ever got when it comes to building relationships with people and doing business, by building strong relationships. So really good sales training. It was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life in terms of working for an employer. But they would send like secret secret shoppers with cameras in to check on all their salespeople out in the field, because they had communities all over the Denver metro area. I think when I moved there, it was probably about 35 master plan communities, and salespeople and lenders working all over, throughout those communities. Well,
So were you a lender for them?
no, I actually stepped out of lending and got into sales, home sales. But I was employed by the company, so I wasn't a realtor. I only sold their
Oh,
homes, their
okay.
product, their home. I was a W-2 employee, on salary and commission with the company. And
Got
so,
it.
so anyhow, but I knew lending pretty well. I had already made a pretty good run at it, learned a bunch just within that first year or two of being, on the mortgage side of the fence. So, but this has every bit to do with the mortgage business, because this crazy story shows why lending has changed so much since 2008. So these people came into my model one day. It was a couple, and they asked me for an inventory sheet of what homes we had available that they could buy right now. Well, I only had about, from what I can remember, just a handful of inventory homes, maybe 4 or 5, and there was only one of them in their price range. Which this is back in 2000, I would say 2000, about 2006. They picked my property that was about 475,000. That house now in Denver is about 850,000 today.
Yeah.
Back then, 475, 2006. I mean,
That was a lot of money.
it was a higher end home. So they picked the highest, one of the highest inventory homes I had available. Wanted to go look at it, so I drove them down the street, opened it up. They walked around for about 10 minutes, and they were like, "We'll take it." Well, that was a little bit odd, because most clients of mine took wait a lot longer than 10 minutes to make a decision on buying a 475,000, now $800,000+ home in the Denver area. And so I was just like, okay, this is really weird. And I thought, this can't be real, but I kind of went along with it, and I said, well, if you want to follow me back over to the office, I'll write up a contract. And they're like, great. And so I was getting in my vehicle, and I was just thinking in the back of my head, like, this must be a secret shopper. Like, this is someone, the company's sending someone in. So So I'm starting to look all over at like this lady's necklace, see if there's a camera looking, gem in it or something like that. And and for a minute, I thought I was looking in my rearview mirror. For a minute, I thought they were going to peel off and just duck out. Like they got me on video. They're going to go take off, turn it into my corporate office or whatever. But they didn't. They followed me all the way to the model. We wrote a contract, and that was kind of it. Well, like throughout the 30-day lending process, while waiting for their loan to go through, I remember they stopped into my model one day with a brand new convertible. I'm like, man, you got it going. You got the new house, you got the convertible, and the whole time, Larry, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, just something is not right about these people, about the situation. None of it is adding up to me or seems legitimate, but maybe I'm wrong, So they ended up closing on their house. Well, I'd say about 6 months later or so, I was driving around my community one day because I had to go through and check off, where different homes were at in production, under construction. And man, sure enough, there's like 5 cop cars outside of these people's house. I'm like, I knew it. Like this was way too good to be true. It just never made sense to me. And sure enough, man, what they did, so I think they put about 10% down, which that would have been about nearly $100,000 for a down payment. 10% on 475. Wouldn't that have been about, what would that be? 10%? 47.5. Sorry, 47.5. I think they put 10% down. I thought they brought like an $80,000 check to close, so maybe it was a little bit more on the down payment. Either way, it was upwards of $100,000, and they wrote a fraudulent cashier check. So the mortgage company, which at the time was owned by Lennar, because back then builders could own their own mortgage, company. And so, but we didn't have to verify bank statements back then. Now, home buyers have to submit their bank statements to prove where all the money's coming from. Back then, didn't have to do it. So the mortgage was, what's that? Anybody with a pulse, man. So there's no bank statements to ever show that they never even had the money. Just underwriters underwrote the loan. They evidently had their credit score to qualify, so that got them through the door. They wrote a fraudulent cashier check, and then the fault ended up falling on the title company. So the title company had to buy this house back from the status that it was in, and I think it took the title company like 1.5 years to sell that thing because it's that. So anyhow, I've got more, but that's one big, wild, crazy story. So now when buyers come into my office and they're stressed out about all this paperwork and how intrusive it is, I'm like, I know firsthand why it has to be this way now, but I don't expect that a home buyer could really understand and relate to that without being in our shoes on the side of the fence. In fact, I had someone that I was working with earlier this week that was not comfortable sharing bank statements, and so it happens from time to time. There's just some people out there that don't. I probably get it a handful of times throughout the year, but some people that aren't comfortable with it, and you didn't always used to have to provide them until stuff like that happened. So then the few bad actors ruin it for everyone, Ideal customer for me would be either a home buyer buying a single family home. We lend on anything that's 1 unit to 4 units. So we can lend on a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex or just a single family 1 unit home. And I'd say, Larry, probably half of my business is working with home buyers. The other half is working with investor buyers that are buying or renovating single-family 1 to 4 unit residential homes. So that would be my ideal client, is anyone in those two buckets. I work well with either. I'm an investor. I've got rental properties. I've got another company and partners that run that business, and so I can relate to the investor world. I'm very connected to the investor world, so I do a lot of financing there, but I also have just as many home buyers that are looking to buy. So yeah, if you're watching this video and you want to either get started with the approval process or just have some basic questions answered, I'd love to chat with you. You can call or text me at 316-776-4125. Yeah, man. Thanks for the interview. That was nice. You just had like a three questions, just boom, boom, boom. I love it, and I like this technology that you introduced me to. This is a pretty cool app. Well, hey, if you guys are looking for a great realtor, his name's Larry Hall. So call him. He will take super good care of you.
That's
No
right.
doubt. So.